Hello, good afternoon, everyone. To be honest, when they asked me to come and speak today, there was a lot of hesitation on my end. Why? Because I don't exactly know, or I don't exactly feel I'm worthy enough to be here. It's a TED Talk after all. I mean, what's so interesting about my story? I thought about it, and honestly, everyone in this room is as capable of doing what I'm doing. So what's there special to do? And then they told me the theme was breaking boundaries. And then I thought about it some more, and that's when I realized, my whole life has been about breaking boundaries, and maybe I will have something to share after all. So what exactly do I mean by my whole life was about breaking boundaries? I know what you're thinking, the quintessential rebel child who one day got into a near-death accident and eureka, voila, hey, I'm gonna help save the world. No. I'm sorry to break it to all of you guys. Mine was pretty boring. I was the nerdy child who grew up and was very comfortable with a small group of friends. And I think that's still me today, except that I always say I'm the introverted extrovert who has to get out there and meet people in order to perpetuate my causes. But what I was certain of, even as that small nerdy child, was that I always found happiness in the joy that I brought others. And that to me has always been my happiness quotient. As far back as I can remember, I played, my favorite playmates were the children of our household help. And I would remember always looking forward to the weekends because that meant they would come over to our house and I got to share another part of my world to them. I remember saving up my allowance all the time, and on Fridays, I would head straight to the grocery store, buy bazooka and frutella so I could give them to my friends. I celebrated my 7th birthday in White Cross, an orphanage in Quezon City, because that's the impact the movie Little Orphan Annie had on me. But all kidding aside, I've always known that seeing a smile on people's faces is what gave me that ultimate high. And it was just about really finding the sustainability and being able to constantly find that happiness that I needed to figure out. And so I would say that I found and I broke through my first barrier at 15. I was a freshman in ISM across the street, and we have Service Learning Week. I remember being extremely excited about Service Learning Week, not really thinking about what I could do for the community, but at the time more because, oh my gosh, I get to get out of my house for a week. I get to go out of town, be with my best friend. I grew up in a very strict household, and, I can do what I want to do. And so at the time, I was assigned to a Habitat for Humanity site in Amadeo, Cavite. And little did I know, my destiny was sealed and my fate had been called. And that whole week, to call it a life-changing week would be the biggest understatement, because it was grueling, it was physically taxing, it was about making bricks, laying bricks. I had to translate for all my classmates in order for them to be able to interact with other members of the community. But at the same time, I remember going to bed every night extremely tired, but with a heart so full. And it was a feeling I knew that I wanted to sustain for as long as possible. And so I tell you, the nerdy child in me went home and was like, Mom, I think I found what I want to do this summer. And she was like, really? Yay, what? And it was, I want to do Habitat every day. She looked at me and she was like, every day. I'm like, yeah, for 2 months. Here's the number. I'm below 18. Please call their office and let them know that you're giving me permission to be able to help out. And so one phone call led to the next, and I remember the staff member that oriented me was dubious. She's like, are you sure you're committing 2 months every day, June and July of your summer, to come and help out? And I was like, yes, I really want to do it. And at the time, I was assigned to a site in Tondo, in the port area in Baseco, that had just burned down. So that was 2 months of literally rebuilding lives and houses from the ashes. The best part of every day, I remember, was really talking to the people there, learning about their lives, learning about their experiences, and still seeing the spark of hope in their eyes, despite, the bleak environment they were in, besides the fact that their houses had just burned down. To me, I felt like I learned so much more from them than I could have ever given them. And the stench smell of garbage, the violent environment, I actually found peace in it eventually. And that's when I realized that peace is a state of mind, it's a state of content, and it's a state of being. And so I just wanted to continue and continue and continue. When I turned 18, I wanted to raise funds for my birthday. I wanted to be able to build 18 houses on my 18th birthday. It wasn't an easy journey given that I was bullied a lot in high school because people thought that I was only doing this to put it in my college transcript. 11 years later, I'm still here, so I guess, I proved some naysayers wrong, and I realized along the way that you cannot shape people's opinions. They're going to say what they want to say. They're going to think what they want to think. Anyway, I raised the funds for the 18 houses successfully. And that's when it dawned on me that, hey, there are some people out there who really want to help you out. There are peers my age who want to help out as well. But what kept them from doing so is them thinking that the help that they're able to give is not significant enough. And that's when I realized that I didn't want to put all that I have done to waste when I left for college abroad, and that I wanted to continue it. And so I set up the Habitat Youth Council. And the main aim of the Habitat Youth Council was to give others, my peers, this worthy platform of helping out where they wouldn't feel their help was insignificant. What does that mean? To build a house with Habitat is 150,000 pesos per unit. I think that's a hefty sum for a lot of us. As a student, it's impossible. That would be years of pooling your allowance together. But through Habitat Youth Council and with concerted efforts and putting together events that will allow them to bring this help all together, you're able to make a bigger change. And so that was successful, and that's when I told myself, being a do-gooder and being able to help out wasn't as lonely as I had expected it to be. 2 years later, I was a junior in college. I was an urban studies and political science major. That was a time where we got to investigate what was going on around the world. Of course, come thesis season, I remember thinking to myself, if I had to spend 2 years of my life and 250 pages, it better have a greater impact in the community than going to my bookshelf when I get back home. And that's when I realized I wanted to be able to start something on my own. I wanted to be able to address a gap in the Philippines that could potentially help others. You see, giving people a house breaks the poverty cycle. You're giving them that notion of hope. But it needs to be a multifaceted approach in order for progress to be holistic. And so at the time, the K-12 Act was just passed in the Philippines. And so I wanted to address a gap of early childhood education, and that's how MoveEd was born. MoveEd is an advocacy that I started and I founded. Yes, sometimes I don't know what I'm thinking either, but I put up this NGO, and its advocacy is to bring early childhood education to underserved communities. I had this vision of transforming the ordinary daycare into a quality preschool to give hope to the children in the communities, those same children I was working with. And it was also through MoveEd that I realized there's a lot of convincing that needs to be done in order to convince parents of these children in the communities that it's important for kids at that age where their cognition is most rapid, where their mind is most malleable, not to be out doing livelihood, rather to be in a program that can bring out the best in them. And I feel that through MoveEd, I did not only break a barrier, I shattered a glass ceiling, because that's when I felt my life evolve from being a volunteer for a cause to a leader of a cause. And not only a leader in the managerial sense, but a leader in the sense that I was able to turn a vision into a reality, and it's a constant reality every day. And truth of the matter is, we're always conditioned to work towards an upward trajectory. We're always conditioned to keep climbing that ladder till we attain success. And if there's anything I've realized, it's that the higher you get on that ladder, the more demands there are of you. It's actually harder. With privilege comes responsibility. With everything you put yourself out there to do, much more is expected back of you. And every day is a work in progress. Every day I'm working towards becoming that leader that I want to be. And if there's one trait of a leader that I wish to attain one day, it's that trait of being able to relate to everyone. I always feel that a successful leader is someone who is not only attainable, but someone who can relate to every person in every walk of life, which is why it's very important to always start at the bottom of the ladder, climb that up with no shortcuts. And the truth of the matter is, hey, what's this beautiful slide with colorful things? Sometimes being in the nonprofit world is a thankless job. Why? Number one, you deal with politics and bureaucracy all the time. You deal with situations and issues that you wish didn't exist, but which actually exist. You deal with reality. And also, you're not compensated monetarily at all. Hence the nature of a nonprofit job. So you find other means to be able to sustain your life as well, but by still giving hours, like the majority of your hours, to your advocacy, which is why I always say, I don't call this a job. To call it a job would be unfair. Because a job to me will give you compensation. A job to me will be fulfilling. This is more than fulfilling. It's not even a lifestyle. It's become more than that. This has been my life project. It's going to be my passion project. This is the greatest privilege that I've had and that I continue to have. And I always tell people that by no means should you feel entitled. By no means should you feel like you're entitled because you're the ones helping others out. No, you get more from them than you can ever give them. It's a privilege to be part of their lives. And that's something that no amount of money can buy and that nothing can ever take away from you. And that's also when I really go back to my early yesteryears and I realize my happiness quotient is and has always been that, to give joy to others. And that fulfillment manifests in the happiness that you give and the lives that you change. Because no matter what, you're part of their lives forever through what it is that you're doing. And so I always say that beyond housing, beyond early childhood education, my greatest advocacy is really to give others a worthy platform to help out, to make them feel that every bit of help they're able to give, whether that's through time, through talent, through service, is worthy. It's able to make a difference. And in that, you're also able to break the barrier because you're able to break the barrier between what was once just a dream into that dream being realized, into what could not be done and what can be attainable. And helping and breaking barriers is also that two-way streak because, again, you actually gain more from what you're doing than what you're able to give. But at the same time, without those people permitting you to be part of their lives, you would have no community to serve and you would have nothing to gain. And with that, I think the greatest lesson of all is I've learned to do everything with love. And I feel like compassion is key. Everything is worthless if you're doing it for ulterior motives. I always say, you go into something because you love it. You don't go into something because you're looking for recognition. You don't ever go into something because it's a stepping stone towards a greater picture. You go into something because you know in your heart and you believe that it's the greatest thing that you can ever put yourself and your life into. And I always tell people, always aim to break barriers every day. Never stop following your heart. Never stop learning. Always keep an open mindset. There is always something to be learned no matter where you go and every day. There will always be the doubters. There will always be the haters. But there are always going to be the cheerleaders and there's always going to be the lovers. You have to place yourself right in the middle. Do not always go in the good and do not always go with the rah-rah cheerleaders because you don't stay grounded. You also have to get criticism. Don't take everything to heart. There are some people out there who will just let jealousy drive them, and it's just mean. You have to strike that balance. You have to be open to learning, but at the same time, you also have to have that enough sense of security and self-worth to know, hey, you know what, at the end of the day, I'm doing what I'm set out to do, and you either join me in my mission, or you can go find your own. And last but not the least, I always say that life is always about finding purpose and meaning. And with every barrier that I've broken along the way, I've found purpose and meaning to always sink back at me. Purpose and meaning are such simple words, yet it's loaded. It's loaded with so much more. You have a purpose, but then you have to find the meaning. And I feel that every day is a constant work in progress. Every day is a transformational approach. Every day, I want to find the help I'm able to give others evolve. I want it to be holistic help so that the people who are the recipients and the beneficiaries are also stakeholders of their lives eventually. And I'd like to end this talk by saying that more than the number of houses that I've built, more than the millions of pesos and dollars I've raised, or the number of children who will graduate from MoveEd, what's more important and what keeps me going are the numbers that are still left to be done, the number of houses left to be built, the number of children who are still dependent on you, and most importantly, the number of like-minded individuals and volunteers who are willing to go on that same journey and who are willing to make a difference and take a stake in the country and the nation's progress. Thank you.